Hey everyone, and welcome to FreightWaves Now on this Wednesday, August 28th. Up first is Nick Austin giving us an update on Tropical Storm Dorian.
Welcome to FreightWaves Weather. I'm Meteorologist Nick Austin. Hope you're having a great day so far. Going to bring you up to speed on what weather is going to affect freight movement across the United States today and even offshore. That's right. We're going to start by talking about Tropical Storm Dorian. It's changing course a little bit. And this happens, which is why you need to keep up with it every day. So right now, the winds are about 60 miles an hour. It's still a tropical storm, but it could turn into a hurricane during the next 24 to 48 hours. Right now, it is heading towards the U.S. Virgin Islands, the eastern portions of Puerto Rico, probably making landfall in those areas with tropical storm conditions. That's winds of 39 to 73 miles an hour, likely within the next 24 hours, possibly hurricane strength winds during the next 24 hours with a hurricane watch in these areas. So initially, about this time yesterday, Dorian was expected to kind of skirt towards the south of Puerto Rico. Now it's going to move east of Puerto Rico after moving through the Virgin Islands, and then it'll head back over the open, warm waters of the western Atlantic Ocean, and eventually moving through parts of the Bahamas or just east of the Bahamas by the end of the week, and possibly by Sunday or Labor Day. As a hurricane, Dorian could be making landfall somewhere on the east coast of Florida. The exact position, way too early to tell. The exact strength of the storm, too early to tell. But it could still be a hurricane as it gets closer to Florida by Sunday or on Labor Day. So for now, it's mainly going to be containerized cargo, the ocean shipping lanes in this area, where the ships will have to either slow down or just kind of steer around the storm, so some delays there. And of course, local interruptions and disruptions to businesses and to supply chains in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and then possibly in the Bahamas later in the week. So that's the latest on Dorian. Right now, still a tropical storm, but it could get stronger, and it is changing course a little bit to the further to the east than what was expected. But we'll keep track of this. It's possible that the path and the intensity, of course, they will change a little more as we go through the next few days. Now, back on land in the continental United States, we're talking about the possibility of some flash flooding along the I-95 corridor with some heavy rain and thunderstorms today. This is from portions of southern Connecticut all the way up into Maine. There are some flash flood watches for these areas, so there will be heavy rain at times for all the drivers out there along the I-95 corridor in this part of the country. Localized flash flooding, so there could be some roadblocks on secondary roads and possibly some interstate ramps. Lastly, we're going to go back out to the western United States right now. And we do have the threat for wildfires from parts of Colorado, Utah, the Four Corners region, all the way out into parts of California and even interior parts of the Pacific Northwest. Thunderstorms, but mainly dry thunderstorms in some of these areas, very low afternoon humidities, and also some frequent lightning with these dry thunderstorms. So those will all combine for this wildfire threat, possibly a lot of new fires starting over the next few days. And the winds will kick up near those dry thunderstorms too, some really strong gusts, which could spread any smoke from the fires across possibly interstate highways, and it'll make it a little difficult for some of you deadheading out there as well. That's a look at the weather that's impacting freight movement for today. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great day and be careful out there.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the AT&T Business Carrier Update. Today I want to go ahead and start diving into the Denver market. Now, why Denver? Well, we just heard about a carrier, HVH, about a 300 power unit carrier size, shut down in Denver, Colorado. They operated in about a 600-mile radius of the Denver area. But I wanted to talk about the Denver market itself and how it's changed over the last several months. Now, I'm not saying that this is why HVH shut down, but it did become a more difficult scenario over this summer. So behind me I have the outbound tender volume index yearly change and the inbound tender volume index yearly change. So what we're looking at is increasing inbound volumes in proportion to outbound volumes. Inbound volumes indicate that it is going to be a more consumer market. Denver is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. That means there's going to be a lot more people consuming goods. It doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a lot more production. So a lot of inbound coming into Denver, growing at about a 10.7% clip year over year on the inbound volume. Underneath it, outbound volumes only growing at about a 4.19% clip. So it's not matching up. For carriers, that's very difficult to manage because you have a lot more trucks entering the market versus leaving the market. An oversupply situation suppressing rates. Now, on the next map I want to show you, this is the outbound, this is the head haul index monthly change. So the head haul index is a combination of outbound volumes and inbound volumes. It is outbound volume less inbound volume. The blues you see here on the map are the ones that have increasing outbound volumes in relation to inbound volumes. So those are going to be positive markets for carriers to go into. But this is the monthly change. This isn't an absolute value. So these blue markets are they have changed into more outbound heavy markets over the last 28 days or so. The red markets are the ones that have changed to a more inbound heavy market. So Chattanooga still may be a nice positive head haul index, but it's not necessarily getting better. It's getting worse for carriers. Something that happened to Denver. It turned deeply red over the last year. Out here on the west, you can see Salt Lake City also getting negative. The Fresno market is really popping. A secondary produce hit there. Up here around Spokane, the Yakima Valley harvest, increasing outbound volumes up there. And then right around the Midwest sector of the country, we've talked about this a lot. We've had a lot of reefer activity here over the last 28 days or so that have increased a lot of outbound volumes. That's going to put increasing rate pressure up coming into the last part of the month.
Improve your fleet's efficiency with AT&T Fleet Complete, a 4G solution for tracking vehicles and simplifying ELD compliance. AT&T Fleet Complete, delivering fleet solutions for every business.
In our industry, we talk a lot about the last mile or the final mile. But what about drayage, or the first mile, as our partners at Next Trucking like to call it? Joining me now is FreightWaves Market Expert Henry Byers, knows a lot about drayage, knows a lot about ports. Speaking of ports, what are the busiest ports here in the U.S.? Where do we take in the most volume?
Well, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach handle about 40% of all inbound containerized volume. So, those definitely handle a majority of the volume for the U.S. on the import side.
And we're in peak season right now, and I know they're probably getting a lot of volume. Last year, they saw an incredible amount of volume. How does this peak season compare to last?
Well, last year you had about 2.2 million TEUs come in on the import side, and this year we're expecting to see around like 1.9. So there's really about 200,000 to 300,000 extra TEUs last year, and a lot of that was due to the pull forward. So we're expecting kind of a normal cadence this year, so we'll see volume steadily increase until around October, and then they'll decline a bit. There is an early Chinese New Year, so there will be some volume that moves a little bit towards the end of 2019, but it will steadily decrease kind of from October.
When you're talking about this pull forward last year, are you talking about the tariffs?
Absolutely.
Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so last year, the U.S. importers saw January 1st, 2019 as the deadline for those tariffs to be implemented. So what you had was they pulled a lot of their volumes that normally would have moved in 2019 into Q3 and Q4 of 2018. So really in the months of October and December, if you look at the statistics, there was really about 100,000 to 150,000 in each month additional TEU volume on the import side coming into those ports specifically. It played out into the truckload market. You saw spot rates really jump. It really caused quite a bit of congestion in the port.
And we were talking about tariffs and kind of the congestion it caused, but also it's causing U.S. shippers to change their routes and change who they're using, not necessarily China, but they're going to places like Bangladesh and Thailand. Is that changing the port activity right now then?
I would say so. The congestion, first and foremost, for a U.S. importer, they're really trying to prevent any of the congestion type issues. So ocean carriers were also pushing different services as a result of what happened last year. So you're seeing volume shift into places like Oakland, Northwest Seaport Alliance, Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver, Prince Rupert, places like that. But on the actual sourcing and manufacturing side, you're seeing companies trying to circumvent the trade war, move into places like Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, and use those as viable options, for their imports. So the services and the ocean carriers and the routes that they're using are also shifting a bit. So some of those guys that normally would have used the West Coast for their routings are now using places like Savannah and New York to route inland to the inland locations. And
with these tariffs, you kind of have to be ready because you never know when a tweet's going to go out. You never know. Like with the pull forward last year, people were rushing to try to get their stuff in to beat that deadline. Say something happens and more tariffs are imposed. If you're a drayage operator or carrier, how do you get ready? How do you prepare yourself?
Well, from the drayage perspective, you definitely want to be looking at turn times. You know, if you're picking up at a specific terminal, you know, within these ports, there's a number of different terminals that they may have to pick up from. Make sure you know where your chassis are, what ocean carriers they're connected to. You know, having an issue once you're there, if the container's ready, you know, wait times, things like that. I mean, it can cause quite an issue on your delivery. So you want to make sure your appointment times are all set up on both ends, both at the ultimate consignee, whether that's a warehouse or an actual importer. You know, their warehouse location, but also you want to be making sure that you have appointment times with the terminals and that you're sticking to those and making sure you're doing those at a time where you can do it efficiently.
Some incredible information here from market expert at FreightWaves Henry Byers. Make sure you tune in every month for the drayage update on FreightWaves.com.